We're having some debate here talking about the immigration agenda, and with me to talk about this and national security issues, all manner of things, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, the author of the new book, Why We Fight, which I read and enjoyed very much, and other books as well, Fox News contributor, etc. Forthcoming talk show that we'll talk more about down the road. Dr. G, good morning. Let's start with the topic du jour for this show, which has been the immigration agenda, which is basically nowhere at this point. And a lot of right-wing shows right now are going to be blasting Congress. They're going to be blasting these judges, and they all deserve to be held accountable. But I guess the doggies need some airtime. But Dr. G, let's talk about let's talk about the state of the immigration agenda. What's being floated is 20% wall funding in exchange for some level of amnesty. I think this would be very devastating to the base. But I want to hear, what are you hearing and what do you think?
I think the president who wrote the art of the deal is trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. I think the issue here is the lack of spine on behalf of the GOP. They've got 5 weeks to show some intestinal fortitude. My money is on them not doing so. And given that the president literally built his election campaign first on the platform of immigration reform and the wall, this will be the determinative factor in politics for at least the next 2 years. So yes, if the base is unhappy, they have every reason to be unhappy.
So is there any hope for us here? Because this is one where I don't have a lot of nuance. I mean, there are certain things, like as I noted, for prison reform, which as I've stated, probably not my top 50 priorities, but I'm willing to entertain the idea that mainly because I trust Donald Trump. I think he's a good president. He's been a good president, and he's got vision, and I'm willing to hear him out on some of this stuff. This is one there's not a lot of nuance for me. It's a no amnesty, got to build the wall, and that's final. And I think a lot of people are going to be are not too far off from where I am, who are not just even in the president's base, just people who just are sort of a common sense view of immigration, and that a president attempting to keep his own promises.
Yeah, look, I'm not going to convince you off your ledge on this issue. The question here is, it's a balancing act. So, the left is never going to understand this, but the fact is Donald Trump is a fundamentally compassionate man. So this issue of amnesty really, refers to those.
Sure, I agree with that, actually.
No, he is. I mean,
yeah.
And he really does have an issue with punishing the children of, adults who committed the crime, or bringing them across the border. So that's why the DACA issue is not off the table. But here's the good news, and this is the most important message I have for the Breitbart listeners. Donald J. Trump, will never go neocon on you. And he is a common sense problem solver. And he knows that the immigration system is bankrupt, is broken, and needs to be fixed. And he's never going to go soft on the wall. It may take some very imaginative accounting. It may take some very out-of-the-box thinking. But by the time his additional 6 years are up, we will have seen a resolution on the border and on the wall that will comport with the expectations of your listeners.
Okay, Dr. G, we'll come back to that topic. I want to switch gears a little bit and get your thoughts on a few other big items in the news. Yeah. First of all, here's Hillary Clinton, and she's talking to the Toronto Scotiabank Arena, where she played to mostly empty seats and a handful of people living in the past. 5A, let's play this one on Khashoggi.
We have a president who is part of the cover-up as to what happened in that consulate or embassy when Mr. Khashoggi was murdered. And we have a president and those closest to him who have their own personal commercial interests.
Okay, so this is her talking about Khashoggi, and she states, Dr. G, that this is a cover-up and the president's a part of it.
Hillary Clinton should never, ever talk about cover-ups. If there's one person outside of John Brennan who should not talk about cover-ups, it is Hillary Rodham Clinton. From her cattle futures to everything else for the last 30 years, to the bimbo eruption squad, Hillary Clinton is a walking cover-up. That's why she wears those muumuus. She is a walking cover-up. So,
literally and figuratively. So, Dr. G, have you noticed, though, the pattern that the left does seem to all use projection, where they get the exact wrong spokespeople, like Cory Booker is a big champion of women, even though he admitted to groping. I mean, they always choose the worst spokespeople for the particular issue. It's a projection thing.
And as far as I know, John Brennan still has in his bio on Twitter the word bipartisan or neutral. I mean, really, these guys, the lack of irony, the lack of self-awareness is quite stunning. But, I'm torn here, Alex, because part of me thinks let's have fun at her expense. But really, why are we talking about her? I mean, Hillary Clinton, really? Why? Should we even give her the oxygen?
Yeah, I don't. I think it's mostly just for fun, and I agree with you. And I think that she does not represent a threat. I'm more interested actually in your take on Mike Pompeo, who addressed the issue in a comment yesterday. 2A, Mr. Paul, would you play this one, please?
Do you believe that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia ordered Jamal Khashoggi's killing?
I do believe. I've read every piece of intelligence, unless it's come in the last few hours. I think I've read it all. There is no direct reporting connecting the Crown Prince to the order to murder Jamal Khashoggi. And that's all I can say in an unclassified setting.
It's kind of interesting there, because he does note, Dr. G, that the reporting on this was so poor, and yet it was taken as gospel. There are still huge unanswered questions. It's kind of refreshing to hear the Secretary of State say that, though I think he had more extended comments. I had some issues with some of it. But where do you think this issue stands?
Let's go through the possible scenarios. Even if we had, let's say, signals intelligence, human intelligence reporting that said, here is, the copy of the facts in which MBS, the Crown Prince, signed the order to kill Khashoggi. Even if we had that, which we don't, and come on, let's live in the real world. Those things don't happen like that. Even if we have that, so what? The Saudi national killed on Saudi soil in a Turkish diplomatic facility. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? We're going to turn the Middle East upside down, just as Saudi Arabia has attempted to reinvent itself and is now friends with Israel. This is what I wrote in my piece on the Hill yesterday. Khashoggi was murdered. That's wrong. But he was a bad guy. Let's remember, Muslim Brotherhood member, friend of bin Laden. It was wrong. But this is not a geostrategic issue. The geostrategic issue is that the Straits of Hormuz could be taken over by Iran if we do something precipitous to weaken the Saudi Arabian state. And then all our friends in Asia, this is the ramifications, the secondary, tertiary ramifications. All our friends in Asia, our allies, that depend upon the oil coming out of the Straits of Hormuz, will be held hostage by Iran. We don't need that oil. It's not Michael Moore. It's not Zinn. It's not Chomsky. We are now the largest producer of crude oil in the world. We have to think about global issues that impact a potential for a regional conflict that could engulf not only the Middle East, but also Asia. So one man was murdered. It was wrong, but it's not a geopolitical issue. End of story.
Yeah, I agree with that, Dr. G. And I think we've been pretty vindicated the more we learn on this topic, which is I'm not seeing any evidence that this should derail the president's foreign policy. And the giveaway is treating him as if he's Saint Khashoggi, which I don't get why you can't have it. Why you can't be clear that he should not have been murdered, and also be clear that he wasn't an American, and he was connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, which is considered at least not at least terror adjacent, and he was connected to the Bin Laden family. Why does he have to also be he should be knighted? I guess we should bring knighting into the country, and he should be the first American knight. Why does it have to be at that level?
This is the lack of complexity of thinking on the left. If we really believe they're trying to think logically, those two things can actually be true at the same time. That this guy was a bad man and that he was wrongfully killed. Those two things can actually be true at the same time. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to understand that situation.
But apparently you do, I guess, Dr. G. You have to have a brilliant intellect. Dr. Sebastian Gorka, again with me. Why We Fight is the new book. He's got an important column out yesterday on the Hill. Trump is right about Saudi Arabia. Strategic concerns are paramount. And the reason why they're paramount, Dr. G, is because the attacks in Saudi Arabia embolden Iran and Turkey, which is a worse of evils. And the left consistently does not identify when there is you need to unite with less than ideal allies to defeat an even worse adversary. They can't remember back when we partnered with Stalin to beat Hitler, and then we turned on Stalin down the road. How come we've already lost that ability to think?
Let's be true. Let's be honest here. This has nothing to do with mistaken analysis on geopolitics. This is about narrative. Khashoggi's murder is only an issue for the left, not because he was a good guy, not because he was murdered. It's an issue for the left because they can hammer the president with it. That's the only reason. That's the only reason. This is a way to attack the incumbent president. They couldn't care less. If this man were another national, if this were a person from Belgium killed in Vanuatu, they couldn't care less. But this is somebody who was a columnist, not a journalist, a columnist for the Washington Post, who came from Saudi Arabia. He didn't like the president, and therefore this can be used as a cudgel against the Trump administration. End of story.
Yeah, and anything that can use to make the president seem less than successful on the geopolitical scale at this point is something that the left will push. So that's where that is. Numbers 866-95-PATRIOT. We'll take call momentarily. They do have a couple other issues that I want to address with Dr. G. And Dr. G, give me a sense of your vantage point right now of the state of play in this lame duck. What are you looking for right now? What do you think should be the top priorities? And do you have hope that some things will get accomplished between now and when the new Democratic House gets sworn in?
To be brutally honest with you, I don't, because we don't have people like Jim Jordan running things. We don't have the Freedom Caucus in control. As a result, I expect some a bit of noise, a bit of smoke, but no real fire. The important thing in the next 5 weeks is not what the GOP does and not what Capitol Hill does. It's what comes out of the White House, and predominantly one issue and one issue alone. The declassification, the release of the FISA document, and everything that demonstrates the culpability of the DOJ and FBI during the Obama administration. That is the key issue for the next 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, and you've hoped that happens.
I think if watching what the president's saying, I think we are getting closer and closer. I think it is tied to the actions of Robert Mueller, who clearly is absolutely desperate. This story in The Guardian 2 days ago, the reports coming out of Jerome Corsi, the reports coming out of Manafort's lawyers meeting with the White House. This is now become a political witch hunt. The idea that he's now asking questions about the GOP party platform with regards to the Ukraine. Hang on. Special prosecutors don't investigate the political platform of parties in democracies. That's what secret police officers do in dictatorships. So Robert Mueller is showing signs of desperation. How far he pushes it, I think, will be the key factor with regards to when the president reacts and declassifies the documents that all Americans have a right to see.
Yeah, I think that would be great, and I hope it certainly gets done. We'll be keeping a close eye on that. Anything else on your mind today, Dr. Gorka?
Getting on my flight. That's about it. I'm going to have to jump, but
I had a feeling. Which is why I left it open-ended. Dr. G, it's always a pleasure. Pick up Why We Fight, and we'll talk to you next week, my friend.
God bless you and the listeners. Thanks, Alex.
All right, we'll go to a break, and we'll return with your phone calls.